What's up, guys? Today we have a 2017 SI, 10th gen SI. We are going to do injectors because he has failed injectors. Seems to be a common thing on these cars. The original injectors were discontinued. Honda came out with a revision injector, which is what we have here. I will put the part number in the description. It's a kit, so you're gonna get in the kit. You're gonna get these injectors, and you are going to get this fuel line. This is part of the kit. Replace it. That's why they send it. They give it to you. And as a precaution, because they're cheap enough, and why not? I got these gaskets / O-rings for the intake manifold and for the throttle body. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna take the throttle body off of the intake manifold to avoid removing any coolant lines, since coolant runs through the throttle body but not into the intake manifold like the older Hondas. I'm just going to take the throttle body off the manifold in order to remove the manifold from the car. So these are cheap. Why wouldn't you just replace them? I don't want to, it's a lot of work. You definitely don't want to take this intake manifold off and put it back on to find out that for some reason or another you have a leak. It's not worth it. These things are like, yeah, I'm not gonna say how much they are, but they're cheap. They're cheap as hell. So course of action we're gonna go with here, we're going to get as much vacuum lines out the way as possible. Then I am going to start attacking the intake manifold. Once that is loose, well, prior to loosening that, I'm actually gonna take off the throttle body. Once the throttle body is off the intake manifold, I'm going to remove the intake manifold in order to get access to the fuel rail. I'm going to have to remove the fuel rail in order to access the injectors. While the fuel rail is off, I will be replacing this line. This line goes from the driver's side of the fuel rail, which is the feed. This goes from the feed of the fuel rail to the high flow fuel pump. High pressure fuel pump, sorry. And then we're just going to do everything in reverse. So let's get going, guys. Alright guys, so we got most of these vacuum lines off. We have a lot of these top sensors off. We've taken out the elbow at the intake at the throttle body to the charge pipe. We have moved the charge pipe over to give us some space. We've unplugged the high flow, high pressure fuel pump. And now we're gonna head for the throttle body before heading to the intake manifold. Let's go. Alright guys, so manifold's out, as you guys saw. The only thing I have left to do is remove the actual fuel rail. I've gone ahead and disconnected the feed line right here, it is a 19mm nut, and you're just gonna back it out as I did here. You're gonna take out these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're gonna take out these 8 10mm nuts and bolts, and then you are going to unplug the 4 injectors. The injector closest to the alternator is a little bit of a pain in the dick, but all the release clips are toward the bottom, so you want to reach up under the injector in order to release them. All the harnesses are pretty straightforward except the final injector furthest from the driver's side. The harness kind of loops, so there's not much space to grab the harness and tug on it safely, but it's doable. It's doable. All right, man, let me get this let's get this fuel rail off. Injectors are finally out. I'm not sure how well the camera's going to capture this, but what we are going to do next is we are just going to clean up that entire area and prep it for the new injectors. And we're also going to take off that feed line that needs to be replaced. Alright, so we've cleaned the area. We've installed the injectors onto the rail, and now we're going to continue with putting everything back together. As you're installing your fuel rail, you want to make sure you're tightening all of these 10mm nut and bolts evenly. You don't want to disturb the O-rings inside of here. Make sure you lubricate them before you put them in. You don't want them to tear. Also, as you're putting this fuel rail in place, you want to make sure you're also lining up your feed line. Make sure it's threading in freely. Make sure that the line meets the flare in the fuel line correctly and nothing is kinked. What I did was that I left the 10mm that holds the bracket loose in order for me to have play on this line. You want to make sure nothing is binding as you're tightening it. You want to make sure everything goes in freely and smoothly. The fuel rail is currently maybe 80% in, and I've officially snugged the feed line on both ends, and I've also caught the 10mm that holds the bracket in place. Now, I did catch the 10mm that holds the bracket in place before I put the rail in order for me to be able to line it up as it goes in. So what we got left is tighten the fuel rail all the way down, tighten the feed line all the way, and also tighten the 10mm that holds the feed line in place. And then it would be onto the manifold. Let's get to it. So, fuel rail is completely in and tightened. Fuel line is completely in and tightened. I have installed the bracket that holds the fuel line in place. This is a foam cover that goes over the fuel line. We're gonna put that in. And last but not least, we are going to prep the manifold to put the manifold back in place. Gaskets have been replaced. And we're gonna put the manifold back in and snap everything back together. Alright guys, so we're all done. Everything is in, everything is back to normal, and everything is in, everything is plugged up, everything is where it should be. All the brackets have been returned to their rightful place. All of the clips are back where they belong. OEM as Honda intended. And what we're gonna do first is we are actually going to turn the ignition on without turning over the engine to see if we have any leaks. Right? Turn the ignition on. No brake, no clutch. Go again. All right. I don't smell any fuel. I don't see any leaks. And now let's crank it over. Turn the car on. Press it.